Now in this video, I thought I'd share with you the biggest lessons I learned from playing FPL last season, in the hopes that they'll be useful for you too. So the first lesson I've got is all around selling players on your wild card. Now, this might already, be a no-brainer for you, but to me, coming into FPL this season, relatively new to the game, I played it for a few seasons beforehand, but I can't say I was too intimate with the rules because I played other games a bit more seriously. I didn't realise that when you sell players on a wild card, it's just like selling them as normal. You lose any value that you've gained in them. And unfortunately, I think I was tinkering around with one of my wild cards early on in the season, and I sold Kieran Trippier. I didn't realise, but at the time I lost $1 million in team value just from tinkering and taking Trippier out of one of my wildcard drafts. My lesson's quite a simple one, really. There are plenty of FPL squad building tools out there. My personal preferred one is DraftHound, and there's a link in the description to sign up to that yourself. I'm just going to use a tool like that in the future when squad building. It enables me, especially DraftHound, it remembers and knows the squad value you have and the player values that are in your team. So you can tinker around and understand how the values sit, but it doesn't impact your actual FPL transfers. So it's a completely safe way of tinkering with your team. So lesson number one is doing that. The second lesson is just all around patience. I think it's a skill that fantasy football managers need to have if they want to finish in the elite positions. And for me, I feel like that kind of kept me away from doing so. I would say I made a few transfers this season that were a bit knee-jerky. I wouldn't deem to be, absolutely necessary, and I'd probably be better off rolling the transfer and having two for the game week after. And to be honest, some of those transfers actually lost me points. I remember I took a hit to go from Martinelli to Odegaard. I think a lot of people did, to go from Martinelli to Odegaard, and Martinelli actually outscored Odegaard. So I not only took a hit, but I took a hit to then take minus points on the transfers. Sometimes it really is just best to sit on your hands if you're not sure about making a transfer. And the point I've got here is there's another fantasy football game similar to FPL, but there's a bit of money involved, called Fanteam. I came 19th overall in that game out of about 18,000 players and netted quite a decent cash prize. From that game, there was some 3 or 4 weeks in a row where I just didn't make any transfers to my team, and it had a net positive impact on my rank. I actually overtook people that made transfers by just not doing anything. And I think I need to apply that lesson going forwards in FPL. Okay, my next one is it's just being different for the sake of it. I feel like even since the start of the season, I always had a player in my team that I would deem to be a differential to help me gain rank. Ultimately, though, I don't feel you need to be different for the sake of it, particularly at the start of the season. There's an old adage, certainly around the Sky Fantasy Football game that I also play. You certainly can't win yourself the fantasy football game early on, but you can certainly put yourself out of the running to win it. You can lose it early on. I think with me, my tactic next season is largely just going to be to stick with the pack and pick the popular players, because ultimately, usually these popular players are the best players in the game, and going different from them early on, you can knock yourself out of the competition. Whereas I think the real opportunities to go different, someone like maybe Tyrone Mings or Callum Wilson, later on in the season, I use those two guys as examples because I think they're prime candidates for being a bit different, but players that really turned it on towards the end of the season. I think that's the way to go. You assess your rank at the end of towards the end of the season, and use that to decide if you want to go different. So yeah, being different for the sake of it, I think I'm going to do less of that next season. And my next one is just looking ahead. It's quite easy, especially with lots of double game weeks, etc., to be just look 1 week in advance in terms of transfers. And I'd say last season I made some really quite short-term transfers that forced me into unnecessary transfers later on. Whereas if I looked maybe 3 to 5 weeks ahead of time with some of my transfers, I probably would have had a better finish. So for me, that's certainly something I'm going to look to do next season. And to be honest, with the lack of double game weeks that we're going to get next season, I don't think there's going to be COVID, or hopefully not, or anything like that, or a monarch passing away. Obviously, you can't predict these things, but lots of things happened last season, unpredictable, that caused these double game weeks. I think we're going to get very few of them next season, and that really emphasises the need to really look ahead in time in terms of making transfers, because there's not going to be, knee-jerk double game week transfers to be making. You're going to have to look longer term with the transfers you make. So looking ahead, 3 to 5 weeks ahead of time is one thing I'm really going to do when making transfers next season. My next lesson is just, it's not worrying too much about spending the full budget. We all know you get 100 million at the start of the season to build your FPL team. I think it's safe to say, maybe if you, it's hard to say. I think it's fair to say, though, that the best team in FPL towards the end of last season didn't cost 100 million. It didn't cost the full budget. And I think that's important to carry forward to next season as well. You know, if you build yourself a draft that you're happy with, and it's only like 97 million or whatever, but you're happy with it, and in your back of your mind you feel pressure, or I need to upgrade one of these players because I'm not quite spending the full budget. Personally, I wouldn't worry about it. I think you need to build a team that you're happy with, and then if you've got budget remaining, more power to you. Absolutely brilliant. And I feel like, especially at the start of the season as well, you know, players can get injured, form can dip, things can change. Having a little bit of spare cash in your team can prove to be really useful. So for me, I'm going to pay a bit less attention to spending the full 100 million and try and build a team with the highest level of quality. And finally, it's all around captaincy, and slightly related to the point about being different for the sake of it. But for me, on weeks where there have been a clear, outstanding captain, I think you should really go with them. Not going with Haaland on a couple of occasions to be different last season absolutely killed me. I feel like the only weeks where it's sensible to go differential are weeks where there are multiple captain opportunities, because those are the weeks you can really make the gains and not necessarily have a big loss. You know, someone like, well, say Haaland is injured or dropped for a couple of games next season, captaining someone else, and obviously beyond that point, obviously be Salah, Kane, Saka, if he's, well, Kane obviously still at Tottenham, Arsenal midfielders, etc. They can all be good captains in absence of someone like Haaland. So for me, the time to go differential on captains is when the obvious ones don't have a good game week, or, you know, are injured or not playing at all. I think that's the time to go different. So for me, that's the lesson I've learned. Don't go different for the sake of it with captains, and try and go differential on the weeks where there's a bit of uncertainty. That's the end of the video. A little summary of the lessons that I learned playing FPL last season. If you want to insult me because some of these things were obvious to you, then go for it in the comments. But I hope you find it useful anyway. I'm being very honest about what I've learned this season from playing FPL, and I hope that it helps you too. So leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the Golden Goal channel right there if you want to watch any more FPL content coming soon. I'm going to try and keep these videos coming out semi-regularly, 1 or 2 a week over the summer. I've got plenty more video ideas to come. So yeah, stick around if you enjoyed it by subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.